He's around.
Yes, please. Yes, please. As long as I'm around, yeah.
Okay, since since most of our team seems to be on board more or less already, so what I also sent you as an email like half an hour ago or so. So technicalities that if there are going to be questions, I would ask these questions to be submitted as a chat, so that I can see what people are addressing, and I then, based on what has been submitted as chats, kind of build up one all-inclusive question, which basically is focusing on subjects most interesting for the audience, because we can't really see this raising hands and when people asking questions, and we just don't have time for that. So basically I try to summarize what has been put there during your presentation into a chat, and then based on that I kind of make up one question, and if there are no questions, then I'll try to make up one focusing on your topic. And regarding the time control, which we don't have because time is controlling us, not us controlling time, but I will let you know when you have reached the 10-minute limit, so-called line. I will just pop in, and then of course if you carry on, so just in order to stay within this more or less 15-minute time allocated for everybody, I will come in again saying that okay, now it's time to wind up and address this question. Okay, so it seems that audience is popping in and joining us slowly but surely. And as you probably know, this is just one session, which is a part of a bigger event, which has been going on already since yesterday. And it was supposed to be a big thing, let's say a kind of physical event also in Tartu and Pärnu, as we originally intended it to have when we kind of announced it a year ago, but you know, things happen, life happens, and now it's all online, and it doesn't really matter where exactly are you located. But most of us, what you see here on the screen, including me, we are still in Pärnu. Okay, it looks like we are very close for a takeoff. People joining in, and Laszlo is more or less ready. So very briefly, thank you everybody for joining us. So this session today is dedicated to the topic of COVID-19 impact on the tourism industry, and as we discussed with Laszlo already during our small talk session, that actually it's a little bit early to discuss this impact, because you know COVID still goes on. But at least based on what we know at this very moment, maybe we can draw some conclusions regarding what has happened and what is likely to happen, and then basically we can still address this matter. Hello to our Danish colleagues also joining in. Hello. And regarding the timekeeping, when as I told already, I will let you know that when you have reached a 10-minute so-called line or time limit. So basically, it's time to a little bit to wind up, and then again, I will let you know that now it's really about time to wind it up, and then I will ask a question, which is supposedly based on what people have been writing in a chat, and if there is no chat at all regarding your presentation and topic, then I will make up a question myself. But yeah, long story short, let's see what we can say about this COVID impact regarding tourism industry. And the first speaker, Laszlo, being the well-being and health, travel and tourism guru for many years all around the place. I guess it's really healthy to start with you and us being on a coach and let's say being in your treatment in a way. So please, Laszlo, take us away.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much, everyone. Much appreciated, and always happy to join you, since we have been working on this with Hallie for almost, what is it now, 10+ years. I have to say. So it's always a joy to do it. So thank you very much. Since we have very little time, I want to just quickly go through some interesting pointers and then shall see where that takes us. Probably you know this expression, which Notrephobia, which is fear of not having any trips booked, even if this expression may not even exist. But I think we understand where the situation is. So people are really kind of stressed and disappointed that they cannot do what they would like to do. And we need to see how it is going to impact travel as such. And that's what I wanted to discuss. I believe most of you understand or know the 3S model in experiences, which is satisfaction, surprise, and sacrifice. And it is anticipated that pre-COVID, people wanted to do a little bit more of the satisfaction side and a bit of a surprise, but didn't really want to do any or too much of sacrifice. Yes, I understand that financially maybe, but time maybe, but it was not the major issue. So sacrifice wasn't a big thing. Whereas post-COVID, although we may not know how post we are at the moment, but it very much is the case that the surprise factor is diminishing and people look at it as a sacrifice. And that's a totally different mindset. That's how it is anticipated that people are traveling. Everything became way more short distance in terms of time-wise as well as distance-wise. And it's changing the way we have been traveling recently. We also need to look at how it is managed, that we need to forget all sorts of aspects here in terms of previous contacts, accessibility, business partners, even reviews. What review you might have had 2 years ago might have zero relevance to what it is now in terms of services, since you may changed it, you closed some parts of it, you have new staff. So all the, let's say, arrangements around it, not just the actual possibility to travel, but all the arrangements, contacts, partners, networks, routes, all being affected. So we need to have a very different approach here, which is all fine. That's what we have to be doing. But we also need to understand that we have new terminologies. Probably heard of the revenge spending. So people, when they have the chance to travel, they spend a lot of money because they are angry at COVID, if I may, and they do the revenge. So we spend a lot of money, even sometimes unjustified. Or they do luxury shaming. So traveling is now a luxury, and they shame others who actually decided to travel, and they take all the tests and everything, saying that it's a luxury that you shouldn't be doing in these difficult times. So these are all very different circumstances and arrangements. And in that kind of setup, we need to look at what well-being actually is, or what it may mean to our business. And just very quickly, you know, the eudaimonic well-being, which is more in a holistic way, looking at it in how we experience our lives and how we are dealing with challenges and growth. Whereas the hedonistic is a very simple way of looking at happiness, and often it's considered to be a negative thing in certain cultures when you say you do hedonistic because you want to please yourself as such. And don't forget, often that is happening in a short-term scenario. The various aspects of well-being gives us the opportunity to develop services and define value propositions in a way more complex way as we have been doing it so far, because now we need to look at work-life balance in a different way, since people are working from wherever. Now you are in God knows how many cities and places, and now we don't have this separation of work and leisure, because you can be accessing your accounts from wherever you are. So it's becoming a 24/7 issue. And how you can feel the best, what you can do at the given moment of time, how spirituality comes in, how we look at even short-term happiness, and how we look at fitness, because, for example, in many cities and countries, the lockdown actually resulted in massive weight gain. The people got fatter because they didn't do the activities what they used to do. So we understand that well-being have pleasant experiences, but it's more like short-term happiness and not really long-term well-being. So in this whole setup, just giving this uncertainty, the sacrifice, the different aspects of well-being, what can we do? Why we actually look at the pandemic as a positive opportunity, however bizarre that sounds, because people are more interested, people are more open to the term itself, and they more interested in health span and less probably at lifespan, although lifespan is a critical issue, has always been. But now look at it, health span, so how long I am healthy, not just how long I'm living and what conditions I'm living in. So this whole well-being issue became more of a mainstream topic and less an academic discussion. And I think we need to also understand that where we really need to start is defining the problem. And this is not just service development, it's not just offers, it's not just satisfaction, but we need to understand what really drives any kind of a search for travel or well-being related services. And I want to walk you through just a little bit on the various aspects of scapes, which in service design and service business, I'm sure everybody is very familiar with. From servicescapes down to healthscapes, and now we are more in the healthscape business because we need to create, and this is the opportunity that we create not just egoscapes which are looking good and talking about health, but in more like in a luxury way, but we need to create the valuescapes where we are offering something which is meaningful, which has some contribution, real contribution, except the psychological context and emotional context with more of a holistic way of looking at the well-being as a domain. So not just creating services, but we're creating healthscapes. And I want to give you a couple of examples how that's happening and how when you don't need to go far away and it's being already created. And these are opportunities that we need to look into and take it as an example, as an inspiration. Because don't forget, now we do a lot of self-gifting because you have been locked down, so you want to give yourself a gift. How is that self-gifting going to go? What activities you're doing? How much you want to spend on that? Is it really the money that counts when you do self-gifting, or the well-being benefits, what you do, how the service providers can react to this situation? Are we doing non-permanent structures, saying that we build this all from local resources, and when it's rotten, because it will be rotten, then we don't do it again, or we may have a break, or we do something else. So we don't plant things for decades, because local resources may not support such ideas, but this will become a major quality in the works. We do resource-saving solutions. This is also the responsible well-being direction, that you understand that in a hotel, makeup removal, no point to have white towels because you would need to use way more bleach to try to create, gain the whiteness of the towel, but you use black towels. So this is the makeup removing towel in a hotel situation. Is it resource saving? Is it responsibility? Is it because when women, ladies, when you see all the mascara in a white towel, you don't feel good because you feel that oh, I ruined that towel, but in a black towel, you don't feel that way. Is it just a marketing gimmick? Is it responsibility? Is it contributing to well-being? But look, this is all the the developments that we are dealing with. We are looking at lifestyle and community bonding opportunities after the social distancing. Do we create those spaces and places? This is in South Korea, and people are enjoying the hot springs in the center of a city without any payment. There's flowing water, so it's very clean, and people chatting and enjoying themselves, and then re-meet their old friends. Are we creating these spaces and opportunities that actually contribute to the guests' well-being at many different levels? Or we doing so-called guerrilla wellness, when locals would come up with an idea which is not defined, not a service, may not even be 100% legal. This is in Budapest, in the outflow of a hot spring in the Danube. And an artist group created this guerrilla wellness pool that is an outflow coming here. And then you can sit in the hot waters and you take the river. You know, this guerrilla thing may not live forever, especially when it depends on the water level. Or you create sensory sensation, simple and easy. Again, you can keep distances, and it does have an direct impact on a short-term well-being when you have sense, even if you are visually impaired. Do we take these examples and revisit the services, which may be based on saunas and waters and spas and treatments and all that? Do we look at it in a more complex way? This is called the nature cinema, and just by the name, it suggests what you're supposed to be doing, such as sitting down, spending time, admiring the view, and that through that you have an improved state of well-being. This is very clever labeling, because the name itself suggests what we are supposed to be doing. Don't forget, all of these little examples don't cost a lot of money, but it does need a very different way of creating experiences. Or to do a little bit of well-entertainment, which is, for example, sitting in a hot lava. I mean, obviously not that hot lava, and under you have the volcano heating this little sandy beach or sandy area, and then you can have the benefits, but at the same time it's entertaining. How we create this wellness improving, entertaining experiences, such as you go to Iceland and you bake your own bread in the lava, and then after that you enjoy that you contributed to it. How we are including all of these, or we're replacing plastic surgery and we come up with DIY plastic surgery. You create these little chewing things, and through that you change the muscle structure on your face, and then it will look more looks younger and more toned. You know, these are all coming at the same direction. How we are, yes,
5 minutes to go.
how we are offering opportunities to entrepreneurs. We call these guys as wellpreneurs, who are doing yoga in a kilt in Scotland, and now became a sensation, and they travel around in the UK and they do various other places out in the nature, incorporating some cultural component. You might call it entertaining, you might call it just hoax, you might call it as just a stupid idea, but this is all involving different people, different segments, a different way, different aspects of it, but all in all, we know that this is contributing to the well-being of the guests. One way or another, you create barefoot trails, which are very simple and very easy, and you have stones, and you have soil, and you have various other things, and people move, and you can do it on their own. Different rounds in Bad Orb, for example, it's very simple and very easy. Or, you know, pine needles in the sauna, which is very Finnish, or even you can in Estonia, in Russia. So it is acupuncture and the sense, the natural sense of the pine needles. These are all very simple, and if you ask me, very cheap ideas. But as long as you understand the complexity of what we are talking about. So I really, really would like to suggest that from the UX and CX understanding, we need to move to WX, which is well-being experience, and beyond that, responsible well-being experience, when you do have a responsibility towards the local community, the local area, and the responsibility there. And that's what we have been starting. That's we call the 99 Lighthouses project. When we are looking into the merging of well-being and sustainability, we have now a couple of examples that's being collected and showing that you are not just sustainable per se, and you look at community issues, but you look at guest sustainable well-being and also staff well-being. So we do have this merge starting, and I believe the pandemic does have this impact that we pay a little bit more attention to all these issues. So as a little list of take-home messages, so avoid all those labeling and look at it as a cost issue. I think it's more of a clear value propositioning, and then we define the various components of it. So it's not just a money issue. We do need to have, we call it a well-being archaeologist, who is able to define all the natural and cultural resources that we can use in the service provision. And we need to really look at it as something which is a positive impact on the industry, because people are more interested in the anything to do with well-being and health. And I believe it is really a good opportunity for us to actually tackle this opportunity and take it to the next level with tiny little examples and small steps. That this is, I think, has to be taken as a good thing, although it's not, but we have to find height is a good thing for us. And I think there's a lot of opportunities here. So thank you very much. And I think it's 14 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Laszlo. Excellent. So in your experience and let's say capacity to foretell or predict what's going to happen, how long do you think people will be traveling mostly to compensate for something instead of traveling for the sake of traveling? Because now everybody is choosing their destination anywhere as long as they can just travel. So how long will it last? Do you think that we can return to this traveling for the sake of traveling stage, or are we going at all?
I think it's very, it can be very extreme. One end can be that, you know what, I'm traveling wherever I just could. I don't even care, even if I ever wanted to go there. But if it's easy because of regulatory reasons, I'm going because I really feel deprived. And also others will do very polarized. Others will definitely wait for the moment to go when they feel it's safe. Others will wait when they can go to the place they really wanted to go and then go right away. I think the next, I would say, year or two, we'll still go like this very polarized way. But as you know, that as soon as the US decided to open, the flight bookings became 200% higher in one day. Right away, as soon as, because it's a floodgate. You open it, we got used to so much to travel and the opportunity to travel. So you feel like a caged animal in a way, if I may use that. And as soon as it's possible, you go. And obviously, it depends which part of the world you are, which regulations you have. So it's not a global thing because it's not coordinated. Unfortunately, the role of politicians is paramount. And unpredictability is terrible, what politicians, games they play. Sorry, I need to use that expression because there's a game there. And they're playing with large number of people who work in this leisure, travel, hospitality industry. They play with those. And also play with those who would like to travel because it's a tension and unpredictability and the stress of traveling, and you have no idea what you may need, what changes may happen tomorrow, and you don't know how you can come back, what regulations change in the other country in the meantime, and the airline and the government. It's really stressful. It's really, really stressful, and that doesn't help. But, you know, what do I know about politics? Sadly, too much, I should think. I would prefer to know less of politics and would like to have less to do with politicians. But sadly, it's very much what we are, you know, directed by. So we just have to put up with it. But I would say the next year or two will be very disturbed and very random. You know, sometimes it will be fabulous. Sometimes it will not be. And that's just the unpredictability. That's why we lose staff, human resources, who go to a different industry saying that, you know what, I'm done. I'm not interested. I need to make a living. And we don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical, but at the same time optimistic as well, because it may suggest certain other changes. But when you think about it and this is your only way to make some money, the last thing you're interested in to improve your well-being proposition, you just want to make some money because this is the time, because this is your livelihood. You don't care about this tiny little fine-tuning and all the rest of it. Bring me guests, be paying. at any cost. So that's polarized. I think the polarization is the critical part here.
Okay, thank you, Laszlo. So Dr. Puško order is to wait for another 2 years before we can return to normal, or let's say
no, I don't think
normality.
So. I hope not, but I think we need to be aware that it may take God knows how long because of the various political games.
Okay, thank you, Laszlo. It was really fun and interesting having you around, and all the best from Pärnu to Melanie as well, because
thanks a lot.
So many people
who
can relate to you too.
Although I should be next week, but I won't be, so sadly not.
Okay, thank you, Laszlo. And we move onwards to Denmark, I believe, yeah? And our colleagues from Denmark are going to describe this thing we are addressing now as a big, ugly thing called transformer. But there are also certainly silver lining issues related to that as well. So I guess it's going to be like they say in Finland, 50-60, good things, bad things come out of a thing called COVID-19. Is that so, Aalborg University people?
Yep, thank you very much. I'll just try to share my screen. Is this looking okay?
Yep.
Perfect. I can tell from here. Thank you. So thank you very much. Our presentation today is about the COVID-19 pandemic and whether or not it will prove to be a transformative moment for tourism regions in Europe. I'm having problems changing slides, sorry. It's not working at all. Sorry about this. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, so Sansebanez, Anton Clevers and Wilson have defined moments as path-shaping evolutionary inflection points that cause a destination's path or trajectory to change in direction and focus. And from the beginning of 2020, we've seen quite a lively debate about whether the pandemic will indeed prove to be such an inflection point for tourism. Some people have described it as a fork in the road, a chance to transform the global tourism system, and particularly as a potentially transformational moment in terms of sustainability. But what we want to present here today is the findings from a project that we've been working on called Bouncing Back or Bouncing Forward, which was funded by the Regional Studies Association. And in this project, we've conducted a survey and interviews together with many of our colleagues in 7 European countries. And the aim has been to understand how regional tourism organisations have reacted to the pandemic in the short term, and whether they think that COVID-19 has affected the longer term development of their destinations. So we conducted a survey in spring 2021, and we asked the respondents from the destination organisations to rate the importance of a range of different destination issues in 2019, so looking back to before the pandemic and then forward to the coming 12 months. And we asked them to rate them on a scale from 1 to 5, from irrelevant to very high priority. And we covered a whole range of issues from under-tourism, seasonality, marketing, infrastructure, innovation, collaboration, sustainability, and data collection. So if we take a look at the findings, if you take a look at these two figures, I know that the text is very small, but they show how the respondents rated the different issues in 2019 and for the coming 12 months. Ranging from red on the left, which is irrelevant, to dark green, which is very high priority. So if you simply look at the colours on the two figures, we can see that a greater proportion are coloured dark green, very high priority in 2021-22. And so we can see that the organisations in general were more concerned about nearly all of these issues after the pandemic had started. So if we look a little more closely at these, we compare the mean scores in 2019 and 21-22 we can see there were significant changes in 15 of the 18 items. So 13 show an increase and 2, international marketing and accommodation capacity, decreased. And then again, if we look at the data in a slightly different way, we can see how the priorities have changed, and there are some quite specific and in some cases quite dramatic changes. So on this slide, you see the table on the left shows the percentage of respondents who had rated each issue as very high priority in 2019 and for the coming 12 months. The table on the top right shows the top 5 issues rated as very high priority in 2019 and the coming 12 months. And the bottom right table shows which issues saw the biggest increases in the percentage of respondents who rated them as very high priority. So before the pandemic, we can see that collaboration with public and private sector organisations were the top 2 priorities. But in 21-22, domestic marketing and health and safety had taken their place. And these are also the 2 issues which had seen the biggest increases. So 66% rated domestic marketing as a very high priority this year compared to 19% before the pandemic. So we see some very clear and perhaps unsurprising changes in the short term as destinations have adapted to closure of international borders, implementation of policies designed to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But there are also some signs that the pandemic has strengthened some longer term trends. So we can see that sustainability and digitalisation, for example, were in the top 5 priorities in 2019. And there were also substantial increases in the number of destination organisations that rated them as a very high priority for the coming 12 months. So now I'm going to hand over to my colleague Henrik, who will take you through some of the qualitative findings.
Thank you, Laura. What the qualitative findings helps us to do is to get a more precise view of what the regional dimension of the diversity between different tourist regions. We have of course found some cross-cutting concerns in terms of short-term adaptation to the very sudden crisis. First and foremost, there's the issue of uncertainty, which Laszlo also referred to, caused by ever-changing government regulations. Now there's a lockdown, then there's a full lockdown, there's a gradual opening, then there's a question of international travel and are you allowed to travel, etc. and under one condition. And this uncertainty clearly across tourist regions in Europe has caused great difficulties, because it's very difficult to plan for what to do in terms of marketing initiatives, in terms of planning activities, both for destination organizations and most certainly for private firms as well. Another thing that's a cross-cutting concern is that particular types of tourism are seen as more uncertain in the medium to longer term than others, and that has a clear regional dimension as well, because it's mainly conference tourism that creates worries in tourist regions across Europe, because of the uncertainty about to what extent will people start to meet again in physical way. For conferences, we in a sense conduct a conference in this very moment, and we are very, very far apart, and how much and how soon will we come back. And that of course means that regions with a high level of conference turnover in terms of tourism are feeling much more uncertain about the future than others, and find it difficult to act. The other thing that clearly the survey also demonstrated was that because of the travel restrictions, there's a strong domestic focus in tourism just in these years, and that means that and that has meant largely that the destinations that have thrived in 2020 and in 2021 are the ones that are nature-based or non-urban, and conversely that the urban destinations are the ones who've been doing worst in terms of visitation. Now, clearly, that's a regional dimension to tourism during and after the pandemic. That some types of tourist regions do better than other types of tourist regions. And an interesting byproduct of this is actually that the question of over-tourism, which we hitherto have associated with big places like Venice or Barcelona or Amsterdam, is gradually moving towards smaller places, coastal destinations, etc. Places where people go to escape from the large crowds of the cities, be closer to nature, only to discover that a lot of people are doing exactly the same, so that these small places start to become pretty crowded as well. So what are the responses in terms of development activities? Laura suggested that we have, of course, the sort of short-term, high priority things we can see in the survey about domestic marketing and health and safety issues, but just below them, and also clearly with a much stronger emphasis now, are things that potentially could be much more future oriented, namely digitalization and sustainability. And what we see across the tourist regions we have interviewed and surveyed is that clearly digitalization has accelerated, but it's also still a very diverse phenomenon, whereas in some regions it's mainly about doing online, starting to do online booking, moving away from analog technologies, something that other regions have been doing for decades. And in some regions it's actually trying to create digital experiences, trying to create a business model around actually people not traveling but having experiences on an online basis. What we also,
Henrik, 5 minutes to go.
Thank you. Also, what we've seen is that many of the initiatives in terms of digitalization were actually pre-planned, but the fact that the pandemic hit the European tourism region means that they've accelerated, that they've been scaled up. So if in that sense, the theme of acceleration of digitalization is very important too. But it should also be said that many interviewees, of course, argue that the analog visit actually being there will still be the real thing. The other thing that has been in terms of activities shot up the league table has been the focus on sustainability, and that actually, when you look into the detail, what does this mean through the interviews, the regional diversity is even more pronounced. So this is examples include anything from, like, trying to source food more locally in order to reduce the carbon footprint, but also in order to create a more genuine local experience, to issues of how can you make mobility in the destinations or to the destinations greener. Again, we see that a lot of the initiatives in sustainability actually draws on existing plans and projects. So the theme of actually moving things up the agenda was possible also because this was something that the destination managers were thinking and businesses were thinking about already. But it's also clear, unlike digitalization, which is nearly universally embraced, that the issue of sustainability still is something that is being debated amongst within tourist destinations, namely how to use sustainability to actually appeal to visitors. Moving on to the final slide about the long-term outlook, we asked we looked at the survey data and was able on the basis of this to determine the answers to the questions: about has this pandemic changed the long-term development vision for the destinations, and it's quite evenly balanced here, while 38% says yes, it has changed our long-term vision, 45% says no, it hasn't, and there are a significant number of don't knows as well. If we look through the interviews on a more detailed basis of this, we can see that in terms of the overall strategies, there's a balance between continuity and adjustment. The adjustments are often associated with accelerating existing priorities, for instance, in digitalisation or sustainability, or trying to introduce either sustainability or digitalisation as a major strand in future strategies. Other tourist regions have more seen the pandemic as confirming their existing priorities, so that what they wanted to do was actually what is needed also in the context of the effects of the pandemic. And then finally, we have a small group of DMOs who are actually, for other reasons, obliged to write their strategies during the pandemic itself, and of course their pandemic view of things was clearly incorporated. Now, the side effect here, and I think this is important from a regional dimension, is the is a widespread perception that the importance of destination management organizations at the regional level has actually increased. Now, this is felt in two ways, either because in some places clearly it didn't work, so governance arrangement needs to be changed, but also, and most prominently, that clearly within the crisis, the regional tourist organizations have improved their working relationship, both with other public actors, but most certainly with their private stakeholders. And therefore, there's a belief that destination management organizations have been increasingly recognized as valuable in the management of tourist regions. And the good question, of course, is will this positive recognition be carried on into the future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sergei from our team here in Pärnu is asking whether you could provide some examples of digitalization as tourism adjustment strategy that you may have witnessed during your research.
Yes. There is this spread between, on the one hand, adopting what some regions would see as very basic kind of digital presence, in that you can book your hotel or book your access to attractions or museums, etc. online. That's a very basic thing, but we've also seen other attractions moving who had this online booking already, stepping it up in the sense that the gift shop, which you always exit through, has now ended up having a physical presence as well, so that you actually make money online by selling goods and things that is associated with a particular attraction or museum. Others have started to do virtual tours of their premises. Some in short form, just to be a sort of tasting thing. So it increases the promotional efforts, making them even more visible online. And some have tried to do full tours and experiences in periods where they have been locked down, also as a kind of promotional thing. I think the realization that it's difficult to completely substitute a physical being present there experience with an online tour is clearly accepted, but in a situation where travel can't happen or is very difficult or costly, then having this as a sort of intermediate thing is also an option.
Thank you. And one question regarding the time span of this impact we are let's say focusing on now. When Laszlo said that in his context it's likely to be another 2 years before we can claim to return to normality, whatever it is. In this regional aspect, in your opinion, how long this impact will last until regions can kind of declare that yes, we have now managed to cope with this situation and are moving onwards in a more normal context?
Well, in the survey we asked about years 2021 to 2022, and it was very clear that there were going to be quite significant changes in their priorities in that time frame, so the 2 years that we talked about previously. And when we look at the qualitative data, in the interviews with destinations, I think there was actually just a huge amount of uncertainty about how long this was going to last. A large number thought, when we asked them about their long-term strategies, it was sort of 50-50 almost about in terms of whether or not it had changed. But a large number thought, we're not sure. They just said it's impossible to tell how long this is going to impact us. And even those that said, well, our strategy hasn't changed, but they clearly their activities had still been affected by the pandemic, and they were expecting them to be affected for the foreseeable future. So I think that's the best sort of guess we can come up with at the present time. They are hoping that within 12 to 18 months will be more normal, but who knows?
Okay, thank you very much. What we have seen in Estonia actually in regards of this regional context, since we've been virtually cut off from international markets, we used to have, let's say, Finnish tourists coming to Estonia. If everything is depending on domestic tourism, mostly all of a sudden also the regional aspect within the country or destination called Estonia has been kind of reshuffled in a way. All of a sudden people are discovering places they were not even aware of before it all happened. So yeah, things are definitely changing around here as well. Thank you very much, our dear colleagues from Denmark. And now to the more airborne topics. It's not supposed to be introduction to Allan's presentation from Estonian Aviation Academy, but the last bit of news I saw this morning before opening my computer in order to start this event here was about our Tallinn airport people having a discussion on social media, but now it seems that the big ones are taking over a market, and it doesn't really mean that the small ones are dropping like dead flies, but it means that small carriers are becoming marginal carriers and the big ones are just having a larger share of the market. But what is actually happening above us in the skies, Allan Nõmmik will let us know now.
Thank you, speaker. Thank you for organizer for inviting me with the presentation to your fruitful conference. Yes, I'm partly just a geographer always, and that means that for me it's quite pleasant to participate and listen in your fruitful presentations. And if you prepare this presentation, I thought about two main objectives. First of all, yes, it could be reasonable to do some introduction of the current situation, and mainly present for some critical vision from point of view of pre-pandemic situation in the market and what we see that today in the market as well. And crisis, yes, crisis in air transportation. It's like a challenge for aviation specialists because nothing to do with own previous education knowledge, because the forecast which some organizations try to complete or forecast scenarios based on the vaccine efficiency, it's quite completely new for aviation specialists and managers, and this process is how it could what will be the working scenario, who knows, but yes, if somebody is planning something, it's based on the just I have to say that yes, medicine questions, not just related with aviation industry. Yes, during the years in the society, sometimes in some other sources, it's been understandable that transportation and air transportation, for example, it's like independent or important economical branch. But this crisis show us the reality. The transportation, that means that vehicle able to move from one point to another, and not just from technical point of view, but from point of view of the approving of the authorities of moving from one point to another. Yes, and carrying passengers. And second point, it's just related with the ability for clients for traveling. I mean that passengers, for example, and this crisis shows that some absolutely just second reality, I have to say that, and hereby I carried some small number of introductions of situation, which offered us International Transport Research Association, and for example, from point of view of revenue passenger kilometer changes and available seat kilometer changes, and maybe that some point of view of the profitability, the European situation more badly than the United States one. Always, all these things had some reasons, and the reasons coming not from this crisis, but coming from the previous time. And yes, for today, the aviation industry, independent factor like a vaccine, politics, and all the regulations, always the economics regulations, what could happen with the economics. For today seems to be a good situation, but who knows what could be the future. And yes, new factors, just which aviation sector just looking for. It's like keeping crews, aircraft, airlines operators, who knows who survive. NSPs, I mean that traffic and navigation service providers, including the dispatcher or air traffic service officers, their qualifications, always maintenance organization, airport and airport ground handling organization to be ready for example, renaissance of the system. But who knows how it could be realized. And some words related with European market failures before crisis. Yes, in Europe, been on paper, been created that just a single market, but in Europe, if we compare situation with the United States, for example, we know that we have just traditional airlines, and which just keeping just, I have to say, flag carrier identity. For example, we could speak about how many bases outside of Finland being created by Finnair in Europe. The same things related with, for example, SAS. Yes, some changing in plans, some tries to do some daughters in Spain or in Baltic states, and then the collapse of this plan. But the single market is not working, and the second point, a lot of airlines, that means that restriction for cooperation, because airlines cannot cooperate or calibrate their flight schedule and maybe prices, because it would be the hazard to realize some illegal cooperation from point of view of Brussels. And third point, it's a number of aircraft with less than 100 seats in Europe had declining trends, which put for example, small destinations, or small demand destinations and regional airports, especially, to the very difficult situation. In Europe, additionally, we have if we compare situation with low-cost airlines here in Europe and the United States, for example, European one are more aggressive and just focusing only for point-to-point traffic. And all these factors ensure a situation while the profitability of airlines in the United States much higher than in Europe, unfortunately. And then some numbers and new reality in aviation. That means that we compare all these forecasts or all numbers with 2019, and if I put this some numbers, passenger carried and flights, I recognize that this, yes, the number of the passengers decreased more rapidly than the number of the flights, and in the total traffic, always the same situation in commercial traffic. Example was carried by different states around the Baltic Sea could be explained differently. For example, yes, in Estonia we have some only domestic flights, only just pay for public service navigation flights, which could be provided. Yes, and to understand it, that the losses in this market could be the minimum, and always a good situation in Norway with their own internal traffic, and but for example, there's a lot of losses in Germany traffic, and from my point of view, it's often there's some coefficient for measuring the stability of operation, which could be shared between changes in air traffic movements and changes of passenger movements or passenger number, what would be interpreted differently. For example, one point of view of the air transport is just adapt to the changes, or maybe operating with a very low, for example, low load factor, or with very high support for local authorities, etc. And yes, we see that we're speaking about the total traffic, mainly the previous coefficient being near the 2, but the domestic traffic, we see the picture more friendly. That means that it's understandable because traveling inside independent states during the corona crisis been more flexible, I think, than the international one.
Alan, 5 minutes to go.
Yes, thank you very much. And for today, we see what's the picture. We see success of low-cost carriers, and especially Ryanair. I mean, why they are successful? Firstly, trans-European identity. Ryanair or Wizz Air operating there where they where they see the market, not just on their own market. If they see the market, they are operating there. If not, not. Second point, very interesting. Which market worked during the crisis always? Is just from one point of view, it could be understandable, like gastarbeiters. If these people are coming back from the foreign city to visit families, it could be the VFI passengers. Different understandable, but this market just working, and Ryanair offering the solutions, direct solutions. What's important. Or with the tourism, as like previous previous speakers mentioned that for today the demand for the tourism anyway, people are ready to go. If aircraft is able to fly and people able to move, they're going there, which is where is possible. This model is working with operation, the minimum of operation risks, and what's interesting, load depends on the business passenger segment. If we compare, for example, a business model like Ryanair and EasyJet been more oriented to the business clients, and that's why we will find that this airline is not so big position like Ryanair, for example. News for the topology point of view. Hub and spoke network in the nearest time, I see could meet the big problems because lack of business travelers. And what's working today and what's its good news for tourism? Mainstream destinations like Canary flights or Egypt flights, if for some destination able to fulfill 180 seats aircraft could be provided. Always Ylupukki issues, for example, Christmas flight to Finland, 3 regional airports. If been able approved flight from some European destination to these destinations, it would be open. What happened with all others industry? Well, I mean these airlines which previously been oriented to the business clients, to the transcontinental traffic, it could be big question, because for surviving, we all understand that for the surviving this winter, flight to the Egypt and Canary is not enough for the whole industry. And always a question for the this tourist destination, which is not just a mainstream one, where operating charters, and always a question for the conference tourism, because we know that it's not working now well. And thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for your question.
Thank you, Allan. Marit is asking, with a little bit of comment added to it, that shame of flying occurred already before pandemic hit us and in some countries. And are you aware of any plans discussed now how to rearrange this aviation system as a whole during and after the pandemic? Any discussion going on regarding this topic at all?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no, because I see that the main discussion just in Europe level are focusing to the just state aid or European Union state aid help or support of airline, not just rearrange the whole system. We know, for example, Estonia, for Estonia especially, it's a very important question, because for one point of view, losing of national carriers, it means that who is just starting to fly, and but be the competitor against, for example, state-owned Air Baltic, which Latvian government will pay any money for the support these activities at burning the money. One point of view, but always the hazard that if some airline disappeared, maybe it disappeared the Air Baltic always, and who is flying from Estonia? Who is flying from the Baltics? Because a lot of maybe low-cost airlines, but for example, it could be good news for tourists, but bad news for the business travelers for the future, for sustainable development. And yes, unfortunately, main discussion in European Union and focusing for the survival of industry and for the rules of support airlines in this difficult time. Thank you.
And a question regarding the same context I've been addressing with other speakers. So how long you estimate this pandemic-related crisis is now going to continue in this aviation context? What is your personal opinion or view on that?
I keep my words between. I told before that yes, if we see that it's a nearest time, for example, the pandemic situation could be under control, the aviation industry able to renaissance very quickly. But if the situation stays longer, we could see the problems with operations, because pilots losing qualifications, air traffic control officers losing qualifications, and airlines, especially private-owned airlines, disappeared from the market. I think that this spring could show us the real reality, and maybe some decisions have to come from the European Union. But is it this decision just solving the problem which been created before or not? It's up to situation.
Okay, thank you. So we could say that regarding the aviation, it's not so much about aviation, but the actual situation with pandemic.
Yes, yes, of course.
On standby. Okay, thank you, Alan. And the next speaker, Sergei, is going to take us into the exciting world of tourism, but from a cultural angle. So this is what the excitement is all about, since we know that also the cultural industries have been hit hard and the tourism industry has been hit hard. So this is like double hard in a way. And now Sergei can tell us what is the situation like in Estonian cultural tourism context. So Sergei, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Just a minute, I will share the presentation so that everybody can see it. So the topic is COVID-19 impact on tourism and culture sector in Estonia. And this is a part of a bigger research which was taken about a year ago, and the data was collected during summer and autumn all over Estonia with the different tourism players. And my part of the research, which I provide the analysis here, is COVID impact on culture sector in Estonia. So as for research settings, tourism managers in cultural sector were interviewed to assess operations during COVID-19, and later interviews were recorded, transcribed, and translated into English. And then textual content analysis was applied in order to have a qualitative analysis of the interviews. And categories were extracted, and domains of information were determined. And so I took a closer look at the cultural sector of tourism in Estonia. And so for interviews were selected with those conducted with museums, concert halls, nightclubs, and cinemas. And open-end interviews were have shown that the focus of tourism actors on the following main domains. So there is a mistake. It should be category of the okay, I'll just read these domains because as I see, they do not reflect reflects correctly in the presentation. So the main categories which appeared from interviews with the tourism cluster sector in Estonia were losses of operations, number of tourists, customers, marketing, governmental support, perspectives, perceptions of tourism managers, and strategies to cope with COVID impact and actions. So let's see closer at some of these main domains which were determined by the interviewees. And the first one which appeared was effect on business. And according to all respondents, the economic crisis followed by coronavirus caused a significant damage to operations, and some estimations are up to 95% drop in incomes of cultural cluster in tourism in Estonia. And basically, this finding reflects similar economic effects from previous downturns caused by pandemics. For example, the research is very in line with reactions after Ebola or bird flu, but there was not recorded such a significant drop up to 90%, but still there was a big downturn in operations of tourism operators. And also, tourism actors identify changes in numbers, profile, and consumption behavior of customers. And importantly, these consequences of the current economic crisis are yet difficult to measure in full. And there are some examples from interviews that you can take an impression how tourism managers qualify this downturn in operations. So there are 4 extracts, and some of them say that turnover fell by 35–40%, and also that some additional costs were involved. For example, with extra food packaging for hoteliers and spas. Also, some of them stated that was the major downfall during the holiday business. Another domain of information which respondents stated was scope and strategies. This was really a big part in response from tourism operators. And many of them state that more intensive use of internet via social media and also digitalization, as was mentioned in the previous presentation by Henrik and Laura, became on a scene, tourism scene, very popular and as a coping strategy for tourism survival. Another strategies which were enumerated by managers were longer ticket sales period, trains for staff. This was the strategy that most of operators used as well. And many of them also tried to adjust business model to new circumstances. Another big domain of information was governmental support, and the estimates of operators are so that the support is estimated is quite controversial, and respondents also indicated major criticism to governmental support. Although this is also in line with the similar research during previous pandemics, and it states that major of operations are never satisfied with the governmental measures at the initial or introductory phase, when operators are not yet ready for extraordinary measures, and they're trying to implement those measures later, but the first reaction is actually quite poor, and it's normal, as tourism literature shows. And Yes, that's what I wanted to say in this slide, and go next. Another big domain of information is perceptions of operators, and operators demonstrated mainly uncertainty in business development and frustration in everyday routine operations. And this finding is also quite normal for such huge downturns. Actions, this part reflects the actions which tourism in cultural cluster, actions which were undertaken by the tourism players. And many of them stated that rethinking of a marketing image of Estonia is required. For example, Estonia is a safe destination, and there are examples from other countries which try to employ a more safer image of the country in tourism purposes. Also important is search for innovative solutions and cooperations with other sectors. And here, IT sector, information technologies, comes as the first and probably the most important. Other sectors also include science and robotics. And also research demonstrated that virtual reality can be as a support for tourism business sector, and the trainings and further research in tourism sector are required. And also practical trainings and practical research, such as different kind of feasibility studies, tailored marketing research, and expert focus groups. And this is the visualization of text analyzer by JSTOR Analytics, and it was adopted by scientific society as trusted scientific results. So it can visually demonstrate the major themes in responses of interviewees from tourism cluster. And we see among other understandable things like coronavirus, economic crisis, and in the center there is information sector. So many of them mentioned information technology and internet as a tool and instrument to adjust current business to new circumstances.
Sergey, 5 minutes to go.
Yep. Yes, and you see among other blocks, tourism and travel industry, and all this is in line with the development of such instruments of, as, for example, sales through internet. And there was a good example, for example, from Narva Museum, who implemented virtual tours, and basically visitors could go navigate through the museum online. And on the other hand, it was guided in real time. So a guide was also connecting through the internet, and he guided the online visitors through this real facilities as a virtual tour. Very interesting experience. And that was one of the examples how tourism cluster adjusted to a new reality, to new normal reality, I would say. And I think this is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey. So knowing that your actual hobby horse is digitalization and virtual reality and all these IT-related aspects in tourism, can you provide us with some examples of what happened, like good cases, bad cases, anything that tells us the story, what actually happened in this cultural tourism segment or sector in Estonia in regards of going digital or going virtual?
Well, what I found that there is really digitalization and virtual reality can be a substitute, and in some cases a support instrument for tourism sector. For example, when there is a physical carrying capacity is exceeded, or when there are such restrictions which we have today with traveling. So virtual travel can be a way to keep some income from at the destination. For example, when it's not possible to visit a museum, you can still sell tickets online, and this way you can reach actually such a segment of tourists which probably will never come to Estonia. As example, this from Narva Museum, they have in the new profile of visitors whom they sell in their online tours. They got people from all over the world, from Brazil, Chile, Australia, and so on. So not all of them in normal circumstances have an opportunity to come to Estonia, for example. But this tool provides extra opportunity for those who are located far or have limited budget for traveling and so on. So this is also can be perceived by a tourism cluster as an instrument to support the current business model.
Okay, thank you. So in your estimate, how long this impact on cultural sector connected to tourism is going to last?
Yes, this is an interesting question, but my opinion is that actually we need to adjust to new normality. So it's never going to be the same again as it was before. And the changes in those shifts which are going on now, which we witness, actually are crucial. So I think that now we can observe the shaping of a new tourism industry. So we just need to make more research and to understand how we should deal with it. So I think that it's never gonna going back as it was before.
So there is not going to be new normal, there is going to be next normal, and the next normal is completely different from the normal we are used to.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Sergei, very much.
Welcome.
And now another speaker from our humble abode, Pärnu College, Marit, will kind of take us back to where we left our Danish colleagues, core and periphery regions. And as I already commented there, at least in Estonia, we've seen a strange situation that all of a sudden core and periphery are changing places. As one example is our old town in Tallinn, which used to be the busiest place when we had international tourism, overcrowded, and these days this seems to be the quietest place on our tourism map if you look at where people are moving around as tourists. But Marit can then tell us the rest of it. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I will kind of continue also from where the Sergei left off to proceed with the topic, because we conducted this massive study for Estonian Ministry of Economic Affairs called Impact of COVID on Tourism-Specific Industries and Associated Influence on Other Sectors of the Economy. And I now talk about the results in a context of core and periphery. Estonia is not a well-known destination in the world, and it is also not heavily dependent on tourism. But tourism has an important part in our economy. About 80% of gross domestic product, and capital town Tallinn was most touristic area in Estonia, being also part of UNESCO World Heritage Site with its old town. Now, Tartu is the destination for educational tourism. Pärnu is a resort and spa town, and also called the summer capital of Estonia. And Viljandi and Narva can be considered sort of periphery in some context, at least in Estonia. And they have been marked in this map because University of Tartu colleges are situated here. But if we talk about the influence of COVID-19, then in accommodation, employment decreased the most in larger companies in Tallinn, with companies 50 and more employees. And at the end of 2020, employment had dropped there by more than 50%. So, but accommodation and catering was about nearly 2% of GDP, and but the second quarter was already stronger in 2021, and now we can see the increase already to 1.1% in the same period as last year. So the situation is getting a little bit better in general. But as Sergei mentioned, then the research took place between October 2020 and March 2021, and we analyzed secondary data and conducted interviews, also created the scenarios for Estonian tourism sector to come out of the crisis. But the aim of this presentation is to show how capital city that previously depended 90% of the foreign tourists lost its markets almost entirely, while many peripheral locations enjoyed internal tourist boom, at least. So previous research actually shows that the crisis have similar effect on customer behavior. So I would like to specially point out that when the crisis occur, people make spontaneous decisions. They decide briefly before the actual trip. Trips take place near home country, or neighboring countries at that matter, because it is more familiar, and people prefer local visiting new places here rather than visiting the mass tourism destinations. So, of course, COVID had impact for entire tourism sector in Estonia, but to look at the results from the regional point of view, well-populated areas like Tallinn and Tartu, also Pärnu, that previously have been popular among tourists as well, suffered much more. Tallinn has the lowest numbers in sales revenues, for example. In terms of volumes and proportions, companies operating here in greener areas, the further we go from the capital city, actually, the greener the situation goes. So, for example, middle of Järvamaa, where there's very little what tourists can do, they had raise in accommodation around 30%, and same thing happened in Viljandi and Põlva County and island of Hiiumaa. The numbers for island of Saaremaa are a bit lower, since it used to be a very popular summer destination before the pandemics as well. So people were looking for places to visit in rather remote areas. Here is another graph, and since most of the tourism service providers are situated in capital city, Tallinn, then the decrease of accommodation or accommodated tourists has dropped in the whole Estonia. Yet we see here that Hiiu County or island of Hiiumaa even had a small rise in visitors. Now, to look visitor movements on map during most popular tourism season, then similar trends can be spotted. In April and May 2019, that it's here, most touristic areas are blooming. So Tallinn up here, or Harju County, Pärnu as well, and Tartu region, Ida-Virumaa. But same time, 2020, capital is light purple, while border areas and previously not so much visited areas have had more visitors. In June, coastal areas were popular here in 2020, but also East Estonia. And in July, the border areas, the popularity rose there, or many people visited the border areas in 2020. So to add a layer of qualitative data to the results, then the C here stands for core and P for periphery, or the tourism company situated there. Then it could be said that the bigger companies and the companies relying only on one field of activity, for example, accommodation or catering big groups, or hosting conference groups, as was mentioned in previous presentations as well, theme parks, they suffered the most. It was also so in peripheral areas, for example, theme parks that are not located in the capital area, or group-oriented service providers. And then since rural areas tourism is often also one of the activities next to agriculture, for example, then these service providers witnessed the rise. For example, one entrepreneur who offered smoke sauna experience really near the border area and sells also smoked meat. They stated that they had to set business hours because people wanted to visit all the time. And if we take the second quote from the slide, then in capital, several tourism companies made fast decisions and eliminated the company to avoid bigger losses.
Marit, 5 minutes to go.
Okay, I'm almost done. Transportation companies connecting mainland with the island has not noted a particular change in human flows, but companies concentrating on international flows, connecting Estonia, for example, with Finland, they have suffered like the service providers in the core areas. So instead of foreign tourist local used services, and the target group has changed, at least for now. Also the customer behavior that can be noted both in periphery and core areas. So
Okay,
it's actually all from my side.
So thank you, Marit. Anne has posted a question regarding, are there any similarities between managing the crisis in core and periphery?
From the company side, I must say that the successful are the companies that can adapt. For example, one restaurant in capital started offering new service from farm to table, or one seaside holiday village previously offering services for big corporate events. They started offering, so to say, forest office services. But the companies who were concentrating mainly on one big target group, they struggled both in core areas and in periphery as well.
Thank you, Marit. I see that Jarko has raised a high five to appreciate our effort, but I guess he also has some last famous words to say regarding.
Thank you, Ain. Yeah, that indicated. Yeah, thanks, Marit. Interesting to see that it's quite the same there as it has been here in Finland. What comes to this change in 2020, basically, it was like a black death, the COVID, that people avoided urban areas, crowds. So they went to this natural parts of the country, and then the urban areas were quite suffering quite a lot. But then the last summer, 21, okay, the nature was still there, but it was the same provinces that got the high rates. It kind of circulated, but then also the urban areas, so people get used to it. Of course, we learn to live with these things as well. But one thing that it's interesting to see that whether the learning curve stays, because we have had major difficulties to commercialize summertime activities for domestic tourists. In the winter is easy, snowmobile and whatever things, but the summertime activities have been, people haven't been willing to pay those things, but now they have learned to pay these services. So let's see how it will go. So there is also the good side of the pandemic. Yeah, but interesting.
Thank you, Jarko. So, Marit, as I already mentioned, the old town of Tallinn kind of switching between core and periphery depending on what markets are out there or available. Are there any other drastic examples like that? Because me living in Tallinn and seeing it all what happening, it has been really a kind of strange experience, I would say, because at some time you can't even walk through the old town because it's packed with tourists, and a little bit later there is virtually nobody.
You mean in Estonian context?
Up to you.
Yeah.
Would be nice Estonian, but others are okay too.
I think Tallinn is sort of exception in so many ways that there were big worries that this old town will become a ghost town, but people have found it again, or at least some parts of Tallinn that during this summer, for example, what were, so to say, peripheral areas, for example, if you know the Telliskivi area, Estonians know, but all those areas that are popular among locals anyway, then they so to say that if they were considered periphery, but the locals loved it, tourists started coming there as well. So I guess Tallinn is in a way exception that maybe people also who normally felt that Tallinn is something, locals have no place to be, that it's so expensive that now it lost a little bit of its arrogance, and local peoples used the opportunity to enjoy what it's offering as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that seems to be the case that Tallinn is kind of rethinking its status and position in so many regards. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you Laslo and Laura and Henrik and Sergei and Allan and Marit and also Jarko for input. So what can we say about this thing we discussed today? Actually, we can't really talk about this context in past tense. It's still present continuous in a way. It's still ongoing, and in this regard, we can't really say much what have we learned so much by now, because we just don't know. It's all happening still, and not much to decide yet regarding what is the outcome. And time span also, which I tried to address. So at least there seems to be another couple of years for us to wait and see, in a way, how it all will pan out, and then maybe in I don't know, 2023 we could return to this terms of reference in a way, but what has the impact been in a way, at least when probably we will be in a much more, I should say, decided or decisive situation, at least where there will be more facts and more outcomes on the table for us to take a closer look at and then decide something based on that. Now it's more like educated guessing going on all over the place. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for this exciting opportunity also to facilitate all these nice and well-educated people. Thank you, everybody. And I guess a well-deserved break and went to a key session in order to wind it all up all these 2 days. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. And until the next time. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.